Good evening, and we are opening the show with some breaking news this evening as Mafia boss Matteo Messina is arrested and taken into jail, giving Antonio Conte maybe another route of employment, although judging from yesterday, both attacking and defending against hostile forces doesn't seem to be his forte. And for the first time ever in this pod, we actually very nearly got something right. It's not why I'm saying this, but I had a bold prediction this weekend. I think this weekend is going to be where we get all the upsets, right? So I think Fulham are going to win. I think Napoli are going to win. I think Arsenal are going to win. God damn it, that's going to bite me in the arse. I think United are going to win. And I think the upset in Serie A this weekend is going to be Lecce beating Milan. I think it's going to be a 1-0. I'm going to put Strefezza as the goal scorer.
Oh, okay.
Guys, we were so close. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory. We are going to go through all those results, but I'm joined by both my good friends this time. Andy, United winning, you're back. What's happened?
It's just coincidental timing, isn't it? No, I'm quite happy to have like a month of nonsense out the way, and I'm delighted to be back in the pod with you boys. I've missed you.
Mate, it's great to have you back. Three's company, right? That's the saying. And Adam, how are you doing, mate? Good weekend. Saw you were at Adams Park this weekend. That's what it's called, right?
I was indeed, yes. Taking my good friend Craig and John Anderson to the match for the very first time. So, they enjoyed themselves despite the result. Capacity crowd there at Adams Park. And, we had a few drinks, it has to be said. And as you can tell, bit of a fresh trim as well to make sure I get the chills now in the UK because we are dropping below zero again. So typical timing. But how about your weekend, more importantly, mate?
I was good, man. I had a very good weekend. I had to work Saturday, which is a bit of a ball ache, but came back just in time for the Manchester derby. And then Sunday, obviously, was just like, it was kind of perfect because the weather was terrible in Milan. So it was like the perfect excuse to do nothing. So I've just watched football the entire weekend, and it was just capped off by Arsenal. And then once that happened, I didn't really have any interest in any other football after that. I was like, I want the Arsenal podcasts now, right now. But I did see friend of the show, Tommy, had a few beers with him, enjoyed the game. His flat is a bit of a good luck charm at the moment. Every time I've watched a game around there, we've done very well. So I'm going to be going there next weekend, Andy, just to give you a heads up. Going to be heading there next weekend. But we are going to start off with Serie A. And we're going to start, there's only one place to start. And we finished our last show with a quote by Spalletti about how Napoli have to play beautiful football. Juve don't have to. Well, play beautifully and win by Spalletti. That's how you do it. They absolutely ran riot in Naples. I've honestly not seen a Juve team that far off it for a very long time. There was moments, I'm thinking of McKennie, where it looked utterly embarrassing. Adam, I'm going to go with you first. Your impressions of this game. What a great start to the weekend.
Yeah, incredible start to the weekend. I didn't think it would be that easy for Napoli. I thought it'd be a bit tighter, and certainly I thought Juventus would probably do that kind of 11-man behind ball, but they kind of were a bit more expansive, I thought, especially down the wings. But then again, that goes down to Allegri's tactics. I mean, putting Kostic and Chiesa, I mean, of all people, Chiesa as a right wing back, just asking for trouble, aren't you? He would do the job, don't get me wrong, but he's not the player to play at right wing back. He should be further up the field, not having to worry about defensive duties. And they were just calamitous at the back at times. Like, despite the kind of, I think they had their moment, shall we say. Di Maria seems fired up for this. He hit the crossbar at one point as well from a speculative shot, it has to be said. But largely, other than that, though, I thought Napoli were very much in control. Kvaratskhelia had a ball, as did Osimhen. So, I mean, perfect weekend. We were just kind of saying how beautiful it was when the goals were flying through. I just couldn't believe it. For once, I felt sorry for Wojciech Szczesny, which I don't say very often on this pod. So there you go.
There's only so much he could do. You can't stop the tide. Like, if you know what I mean, there's only so much he could do. But I'm pretty sure my neighbours now think I'm a Napoli fan by the amount I screamed when those Osimhen goals went in. Unbelievable. But Andy, what did you think of Napoli? I think after the Inter loss, this is a huge statement. They've their record in the big games is massive now. Really good record. What did you make of Napoli?
I think they're brilliant, and I think what was impressive that over the years I've seen them, have these big games against Juventus and invariably come up short almost every single time. You go into the start of the game, and I think Juventus were one of their third. I think it was their third longest run without conceding a goal. They've gone roughly about 6 or 7 games without conceding a single goal in Serie A. Like, we're at the point where Allegri was collecting his P45 and suddenly he's turned it round again. So there wasn't really much to suggest the scoreline would end up the way it was. And I think what was impressive, I think referring to Wojciech Szczesny, you can't blame him too much because the save he made for Ozilhan just before Ozilhan's opener was fantastic. It's not really his fault. No one picks up.
Chiesa's just stood there looking at him.
I just don't understand. He's the biggest, he's the biggest threat, both in terms of stature and in terms of ability, in terms of goals, and you just nobody picking up on a couple of different occasions. But I thought what was impressive is that, obviously Juve didn't turn up, but I think the one player who did turn up was Di Maria. I think he's the only one who seemed to turn up and do some business. Obviously, hit the bar in the first half, created a couple of good chances. The goal we scored was still a nice finish. And there was a point where there was nearly an own goal that Napoli scored, and that was the sort of thing where had that gone in, maybe that could have been like a turning point. And also when it went to 2-1, I thought, oh, here we go. I imagine you probably did the same as well. It's got to 2-1, you thought, oh, here we go. It's going to go a little bit belly up here, but they've just come back, and I think maybe compared to previous years, they've just got a bit more quality in terms of that finish from Mamani, lovely little finish there. Obviously Caracciavella. I don't really know what more we could say to him, but he's defining what it means to be a big game player, of just being very decisive in the key moments.
And there was question marks over him. All of a sudden, people were saying after his Inter performance and the game after that, I want to say he got completely marked out of the game. People were like, is he going to turn up for the big games? Well, this game, he absolutely cooked Juventus on that wing. They could not deal with him at all. It was beautiful to watch. And it's what we've seen from the first half of the season. I think that will get him back into form because he did have a bit of a dip. I think after the World Cup, people were like, and in myself, I was thinking, maybe he's had that good patch. Maybe the second half he'll be quieter, but he's absolutely ruined Juventus there. And I think Andy makes a really good point. Their defending was absolutely abysmal. I don't know. For a team that's gone from not conceding for over 630 minutes to then concede 5 in 90 minutes, that's quite the turnaround with the same people, with the same players, same back 5, back 8, or whatever it is Allegri plays. That's quite the turnaround. But I think
it's what happens when you have 6 or 7 players all collectively not performing at the same time. You can have games where maybe 1 or 2 people are not on it, which is fine. You can just sub them out and put somebody else on. But I think, again, Di Maria aside, I think pretty much everybody was having a bit of a stinker. I think the best thing for Juventus would be put it behind him as quickly as possible.
I thought Milik had a good game, though. Granted, he kind of did 1 touches and he was mainly trying to hold up the ball. But him and Di Maria, that kind of tells you its own story. That up top, they were isolated, but they did the best of what they could. The rest of the team, as Andy alludes to, had an absolute stinker. Yeah,
well, this is something that Juventus have been really good at, making the most of the chances they do get. They don't create many chances, but when they do, they're usually on target. And I think that Di Maria shot that bounces off the crossbar, if that goes in, it's a very, very, very different game. But we have to say, Napoli, that is the best football I've seen in Serie A this year. They are the best footballing team in Serie A this year. Some of the triangles and the passages of play they were playing, they were taking the piss at times. Like, it was just that slow, and it was such compact, really quick triangles and then big, slow triangles. And you could just see the players moving in the patterns. It was beautiful. I think Anguissa was just... The guy is a monster. Lobotka has gone from a player who was really struggling to find a place at Napoli to being one of the best creative midfielders and one of the best metronomes in the league. And then there's Osimhen, who, as a aerial threat, there's no one above him in Serie A. And that's someone who you'd think after fracturing his eye socket, he'd be a bit nervous about sticking his head in there, but he don't give a shit. And it's just beautiful to see from Napoli. Now it's 10 points. They're now 9 points clear of Milan, right? And 10 points clear of Juventus. And AFC Finners has come in with the comment, it's surely done now. If any of the other top Italian teams were ahead by this much, they'd be putting the ribbons on the trophy. For me, that's why they haven't, because it's Napoli. They haven't quite put the ribbons on the trophy yet. Kind of the thing that Arsenal are getting at the moment. It's the, but it's Arsenal, you never know. And with good reason, it's Napoli, you never know. But I think that Juventus game is their biggest test, and they've absolutely smashed it. And one point I wanted to bring up as well before I let you two jump in on this comment is, if you look at their goal difference, their goal difference is nearly double. No, is exactly double Milan and Juventus, who are the only. There's only Lazio on 16, so it's nearly double anyone in the league in terms of goal difference. They are not just beating people; they are battering people. So I think they are. This is their chance. Adam, what do you think? And I'll go to you, Andy.
Yeah, massively. I think this is a huge opportunity for Napoli. I don't think they'll have an easy opportunity. I mean, we talked about it last season where they kind of looks like they were going to be trying to challenge. This time round, I think they've got a better depth of quality off the bench. Even when you think about Herving Lozano, who didn't come on, for example, they've got Raspadori, they've got Simeone, they've got Elmas coming on. That's it. And yeah, the record you allude to, 65 goals after 24 matches, like the best in Europe, isn't it? It's just incredible. It is a great opportunity, and I still allude to earlier points that I've made in this pod this season. They have to prioritize something. I don't think they can go through a whole season doing this and Champions League. There is the possibility, right? There is a good possibility they could do both, but I think if I was a Napoli fan, I'd be going, let's prioritize the league. Let's just win the league. Let's get it done. And then we can brag about it for the rest of the year, can't we? So that's what I'll be calling out.
What do you think, Andy? I think they've got an outside shout at the Champions League because nobody wants to go to Naples. But what do you think of their Scudetto chances now?
Very high. I think with a bit like what Adam said, I think compared to previous years, back in the days of because Gonzalo Higuaín was smashing in 40 a season, you always felt there were a couple of injuries away from a bit of a meltdown. Whereas, they've shown already that they're able to cope without Osimhen for a few games. They can rotate some figures in and out, which perhaps weren't able to do before. Maybe they don't quite have the depth to push for both the Champions League and Scudetto, but I certainly think as far as Scudetto goes, I think it's hard to see them dropping 10 points, and maybe Juve probably the only team probably capable maybe of grinding out 7, 8, 9 wins in a row, a bit like they've done just before Christmas. But it's difficult to see who's going to beat Napoli in the form that they're in. So I think if I'd put my money on it now, to be honest, that they'll go forward and win it.
Oh God, I hope I get to do a weekend in Naples celebrating the Scudetto, because that is going to be unbelievable. But just to kind of touch on your point, when they're bringing on Raspadori and they've still got Simeone on the bench who isn't getting a shout, and you're looking at the depth in that squad and you're like, damn, there's not a big drop in quality from the players coming off. Elmas, when he came on, was unbelievable. Like, just tore Juve to shreds, and he's not starting. And you're like, the drop in quality off the bench is not much, if any. And they are. Oh, Napoli, you've got to do it this year. You have to do it this year. God damn it, you've got to do it this year. But we're going to move on from Napoli and Juventus. Juve fans will be relieved. And we're going to go, I think, to the next game. Atalanta 8, Salernitana 2. We've got our old Atalanta back. Do you remember when Atalanta used to get these scores fairly regularly? Like, they'd always have like a 6-5 or a 7-3 or something. Like, what
Scoring
the hell's
frenzy
happening in Bergamo?
games.
Like, it's back. And Salernitana were more than accommodating. I think Lookman heard us. We'd said he'd been quiet, and he pops up with 2 goals. And they're finally getting a bit of a tune out of Barga. Atalanta, this is a performance that could turn around their season. I'm going to go to you, Andy, first. It's great to see the old Atalanta back, even if it's just for one game. It's great to have them back, right?
Yeah, even if it's just like a one-time special, it's good. Feels like 2019 all over again. But no, I think they've needed that performance. I was looking for the highlights. I think the Edison goal was probably my favourite out of that one. I just love a long-range curler.
Yes.
Like, the ones where it doesn't look like you just sort of half-arsing it, but you put you through it, it just goes top bins anyway. It's the sort of thing that you don't really do unless you're quite a few goals to the good. But yeah, I think it was a very enjoyable game. I think Salernitana, I think some of the defending was a bit unfortunate. Guillermo Ochoa probably wishes he stayed in Mexico.
Yeah, he was doing well until this point. He was doing well.
Yeah, he'll be on the first plane back after that. Yeah.
But I'll tell you someone who is on the first plane out of Salernitana, Davide Nicola. That was the nail in the coffin. Now, I think that's still quite a surprising decision. Like, Salernitana are not really in trouble, thanks to the fact that there's 3 terrible teams. But, Adam, how do you feel about them getting rid of him? Do you think it's the right thing to do? And who could be next?
Yeah, I don't think it's the right thing. But when you look at the record, they haven't won in 6 games now. There was rumours at the back end of last year, before the World Cup kind of break, that they were trying to force him out of the club. They weren't prepared to kind of give him the backing, which is, when you look at where Salernitana were last season to this season, where they've kind of achieved, like, mid-table is respectable. When you look at like where they were as a club, I think, I don't know what's going on in the boardroom, or there must be a falling out, which clearly is taken effect. And even rightly, a lot of people have been saying, normally you wait for a reaction to see what happens in the next game. Don't kind of judge it on this one result, because at the end of the day, players do have these kind of games where they just, for whatever reason, they just can't pull it together. And it just seems a bit harsh, because David Nicoli, he just brought out something out of that team. He started to get something out of them. And I think with a few more reinforcements, like Okoye, maybe a more solid defender than Fazio, for example, then, they could have gone somewhere. This is the thing. Awful. So I do feel sorry. But the rumoured kind of replacement already, apparently, is Paulo Sousa, the ex-Flamengo and Polish coach, believe it or not.
He's getting about. He doesn't stay anywhere very long.
He's got one of these agents, clearly. But I can't see him personally. I think he'd last like 3 months, and then if Salernitana are in the bottom 3, then they would be pulling it out and getting the David Nicola back, wouldn't they? So yeah,
well, I think Italian teams love doing that, appointing a manager more than once. They do love it.
They do.
I feel like it's. I don't know who they could be looking at, but there's quite a few like ex-Italian players who are managing in Serie B that I can imagine them kind of poaching. Like De Rossi is at Spal, and there's Inzaghi down there, and there's a few like that maybe they could. Cannavaro's down there, right? It'll be interesting to see who they get, but what they need is someone who's, if they're like obviously concerned about getting dragged into the relegation battle, they are currently 8 points ahead of Sampdoria, who are 10th. If they are concerned about getting dragged into that, then they need someone who's like an old head in Serie A, really, and someone who's just going to steady the ship. But it'll be like interesting to see. Sorry? Mazzarri, get him back. Oh, yeah, we miss Walter. It's weird having Serie A without him in it. But yeah, Salernitana more than accommodating. Atalanta, is this going to be a moment for them to turn around? They have kind of, since the break, they've now won 3 and drawn 1, I want to say. So they are getting into better, 1-2 and drawn 1. They are getting into better form. They also won in Coppa Italia, was that it? Anyway, they are getting into better form. And is this the catalyst to push them on? They could still they're in the Europa League places, Europa Conference League places.
They're only 4 points away from Milan. So
from Milan in second. Is this the moment? Is this the moment where they make a charge up the table? What do you think, Andy?
Well, I think if you look at the top 7, all of them are going to think that Champions League is attainable this season. There's only a few points in it and half a season to go. I think Atalanta, we said earlier this season, they just looked a bit like a shadow of themselves. They hadn't quite, obviously they had a lot of injuries. It felt like they couldn't quite get going. But, with Ademola Lookman, apparently, I think since like October, since like the second highest goal scorer in the league. Shows, we've spoken about him a few times before in this pod, but it's great to see his development, or see him finally fulfill his potential as a player after doing the hard yards in the gulag. Sorry, Everton.
It's enough to kill anyone off. I'll be honest. We'll get on to them.
I'd rather go to a gulag, to be honest, and play for Everton.
Tell you what, the atmosphere at Goodison, Jesus, I had to turn on Everton Southampton just to witness it. But before that, we're not talking Premier League yet. Adam, what do you think? Is this the moment for Atalanta to make a push? I feel like they're starting to click again a bit.
I think it depends. When you look at the next match, they've got Juventus, so they really do need to kind of make the most of these kind of big games. I'd be interested to see how the likes of Scalvani, for example, play against this kind of teams like Juventus, because I think he's only 18, isn't he? So he'll be turning 19 soon. He's just, he looks prime. If you look at the header that he scored against Salernitana, that was really good. So, he looks like a prime Cannavaro candidate already. But yeah, these are the kind of games that they're looking for. Hoyland, who I think has taken about 6 months to get ready.
Gets another one.
He's getting into a groove of learning how to play in this league now. He comes with that hype, obviously, from Sturm Graz. And yeah, who knows what could be made of him now in the next 6 months. I mean, they desperately need a striker, and someone like him would be ideal. Wait and see. I think this is a problem I find with Gasperini sides, is they give you that little glimmer of hope that they might actually do it, and then they just capitulate. So I'm hoping for once they actually put the pressure. But then that said, none of the teams have, if you look outside of Napoli, they've all got their kind of faults within them. Milan, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute, they faltered. All of these teams aren't grinding consistent run, should we say, maybe with the exception of Juventus up until Friday's match. I think this is the thing, it's very open for that mix. So Atalanta, all they need to do is get a run of games. You never know. I think they've got the pressure off them anyway.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Consistency is going to be key here, because all of the teams, none of them, like, they're all dropping the odd point, having the odd loss. Like Lazio have won 2 in the last 5. Inter are kind of putting a run together, but still got a few draws. Milan are drawing a lot of games at the minute. Like, you're starting, any team that gets that run, it's properly up for grabs. Even the way down, down, as Andy said, to 7th. Roma on 34 points as well is going to be super close to get that European battle. There's a bit of a drop off then to 8th and 9 points. Udinese, we thought they'd do it at one point, but it's not going to happen now, is it?
No, it started really well this season, didn't they?
They started
the first 5 or 6 games and then just went.
Yeah, it's all
too many
all
draws.
kind of. Yeah, exactly. As is often the case, just need someone to bang it in. And speaking of someone who's starting to bang it in, Dybala is settling in Roma. He's starting to score. He's getting a few goals, getting a bit of playing time. Maybe if he can stay fit, they could actually have a player consistently. But Roma 2, Fiorentina 0, Dodo being sent off.
Yeah.
There was an extinction joke there somewhere, but I didn't think quick enough. But Dodo getting sent off and Roma taking advantage. Adam, I'm going to go to you first this time. What are your impressions of Dybala and Roma? They are getting a run together.
They are getting a run together, but what I want to highlight is actually his partner, Tammy Abraham, because it was that link-up play between the two of them that was critical for this match in particular. When you saw the first goal, it was a nice little layoff by Abraham on the chest, and Dybala just, slight kind of deflection, it has to be said, but he scores past the Fiorentina keeper. And then for the second one, Abraham sees him, because there was a previous opportunity where Abraham didn't kind of pass it to Dybala. So this time he was on the counter attack. Essentially, ball is chipped into Abraham. Abraham sees Dybala running on the far side, slips it in, and the celebrations kind of tell you its own story, because Dybala was praising Abraham and saying that was him. That was all about him. Abraham's been unlucky of late as well, because he could have scored in this game. There was an opportunity he had, which I think he was a bit surprised at as well, to be fair. He didn't look like he was expecting it, but yeah, Dybala, when he's on his game and he's not injured, as you rightly say, he could be the real pinnacle for Roma, and the catalyst that may kick them up the league as well. I think this will be an interesting window for Mourinho as well, because he always talks about trying to increase the depth that he's got in that squad. We know Karsdorp
he always wants to spend.
Yeah,
he always wants to spend.
Karsdorp is definitely gone. That's all we know for sure.
Yes.
But this is the thing. I still think they are a striker short at the moment, which is surprising when you've got Belotti sat on the bench doing nothing, right?
I was just about to say, when you kind of hearing it out loud, Abraham and Dybala up front together, you're like, bloody hell, that is not bad at all. Like, that is a pretty good front line. And then you've got Pellegrini behind him. All of a sudden, you're starting to see things. You think, yeah, maybe the team isn't only a few, but I still think they need a better keeper. I think they need to upgrade the defense a little bit. But they're only a few pieces away, I think. They're not far away. But Fiorentina just cannot score a goal. I'm going to check. I'm going to check how many they've scored for the season now. They've scored 21 goals in 18 games. This Jovic experiment, as we talked about last episode, has not worked. Getting players sent off definitely doesn't help. But Andy, I'm going to go to you. How hard is it to find a striker that can actually score? And I'm not sounding. If I sound sarcastic, I didn't mean it, but it seems like a lot of teams, that's all they're missing, someone who can actually score. Like, Fiorentina are so close.
I think it's difficult because strikers are bloody expensive. Like, if you think about like the elite names that are out there, the likes of, Harry Kane, Victor Osimhen, when they eventually move clubs, they're going to go for absolutely mega money. With I'll give you an example, Paulo Dybala. He's not like an out-and-out striker, but for somebody in a forward position, he was being quoted to Manchester United more specifically for 40-50 million quid. He had a year left on his contract. So I think it's difficult, especially in Serie A as well, where there isn't quite the money there is in the Premier League. I think, they were lucky with Tammy Abraham. The situation that he was in kind of works for Roma, and they're able to make a deal. But it's difficult, especially the January transfer window. It's difficult to, see. Also, I don't know what Roma's budget is, maybe like 20-30 million quid or something like that. But it's difficult to see who we're going to get in that's going to make a huge amount of difference.
I think what they have to do is kind of start looking at it's just all about scouting, isn't it? We're looking at Brighton and looking at teams like that and just trying to find that guy from the lower leagues. And I feel like Fiorentina have kind of done it with Cabral. And as I said again in the last episode, he looked like he was kind of starting to find his home a little bit, and then he's got injured again. And I just feel like for Vincenzo Italiano, it must be so frustrating that they just cannot. They're just missing that one piece, and Vlahovic had to be sold, right? But how do you replace Vlahovic once you've sold Vlahovic, right? It's just impossible. But I think for Fiorentina, again, kind of a mid-table season, they're in 10th at the moment, 23 points. Quite a disappointing season compared to last year, but that being said, they've got the Conference League. They've got a small squad. It's kind of understandable. We see this happen quite a bit.
There's still time for it to be turned around with Luka Jovic, for instance. All right, he's had a poor start to the season, but he is a player that can score goals at that level. And I think with Fiorentina, obviously, because he's probably commanding a fairly decent amount in terms of wages as well, given where he's played for previously. I think Fiorentina's just going to have to stick with it.
They've got no choice.
They haven't got a choice, have they? He just needs to. I think they just need to play through the bad form. I think if they can get a bit of better service to him and 1 or 2 goals in consecutive games, suddenly he's full of confidence again. That's what strikers are like. So I think because we're in like January, because of the World Cup and stuff like that, we kind of assume we've only got like 10-15 games left when actually
there's quite a lot left.
We've got about 20 left. So I think it's a bit like Tammy Abraham as well. You don't want to write him off that early in the season. I think there's still plenty of time for him to get another 7 or 8 goals. Suddenly, he's a player who's got double figures in Serie A, which isn't a mean achievement. So maybe it looks a little bit different, but I think Fiorentina just going to have to crack on really. Same with Roma as well. Like with them. You know what Mourinho is like. He likes established players. He isn't going to get one that's going to score a load of goals.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think for Fiorentina, they just need to, I think if they can push on in the Conference League, it'd be quite exciting. See if they can make a push up the table. But they play, Italiano's a great coach. And I think, they just need a year of building. I think it probably is.
Consolidation.
Exactly. And we have a question from AFC Finners. I've just clicked off the thing. Why did I do that? A question from AFC Finners. What is the consensus of Mourinho in Italy at the moment? Well, I think in general, people are just saying that he's doing a fairly steady job. Nothing exciting, nothing over the top, just doing what Roma were doing before he arrived. He's not really moved them on that much, I don't think. He's kind of, obviously the Conference League win was massive, but they were finishing 6th or 7th before he arrived, and maybe even a little bit higher. So I think they just think he's doing nothing special one. I don't know. He's not doing that much, but they do also see that he's a project manager for Roma. He wants to be there for a long time. They want him there for a long time, and they know that if they back him enough and for long enough, and they keep moving in this slightly upward trajectory, they could actually get there in the end. I think Mourinho could win something major with them, but he's going to need time and he's going to need money. Now, Roma have actually spent quite a bit in general. They're not kind of tight-fisted. They do throw a bit of money around, but I think they just need to get in the players that he wants. But yeah, to answer your question in short, just nothing special. What we expect from Roma, really, just to finish 6th or 7th and kind of piss a few people off. Yeah, nice. Before we leave Serie A, we're going to finish with one game which, as they went 2-0 up, I thought, bloody hell, why didn't I put money on my prediction? Of course this happened. I finally don't put money on it, and it comes true. But Milan now dragged back last weekend. This weekend, they are the draggers back as they draw 2-2 with Lecce. And Adam, I'm going to go to you first. How bad were they in the first half, and how much better were they in the second half?
They were terrible in the first 23 minutes because, yeah, I mean, Lecce were all over them, and it was basically the carry on. If you imagine like the last game where they were kind of dragged back by Roma for that draw 2-2, they kind of continued that like kind of continuation of the style of format and play. They just really like sloppy passing, just not doing the right things. And that's how the first goal came about. It was a sloppy back pass by, I think it was Kalulu or Tomori, I can't remember. But then on the bylines, cross comes through. And it is a bit fortuitous, but Teo Hernandez obviously kind of bodies it back into his own net with Tatarusanu just not being able to be that agile. If it was Mike Maignan, you might have saved it. But yeah, that said, again, 23 minutes later, Basharito comes on and headers it into the back of the net and makes it 2. And Lecce had their chances again after that. Di Francesco could have made it even 3 or 4-0 by that point. And if that would have been 4-0, then there would have been a hell of like news going around Serie A as well with that. And maybe you could argue that, you know, Milan are collapsing, but they brought themselves back into it. Leao, obviously tidy finish. I think maybe there's some arguments Falcone could have done better. And then Calabria obviously gets kind of, you know, captain effort. I don't know why he's up there because he's on the left-hand side rather than being on his usual right-hand side as a right back, but gets the header, scores the equaliser, but they just didn't have enough in it. I mean, Origi was brought on, wasn't he? Giroud had an off day as well. Like, didn't do much. Pobega had chances. I think they're really struggling. They really need someone with a bit of spark. Tonali was obviously missing for this one as well, so that probably plays a little part, an indication around they're really reliant on him at the moment.
He's so key to them. Like everything they do goes through him. He's kind of like taken on that Kessié role that like the hole that they were afraid Kessié was going to leave. Tonali's just stepped into, and everything goes through him. And when he's not there, it does look a lot less. It looks a lot more disjointed, a lot slower, a lot more like kind of predictable. And I think Lecce were really there to take advantage and did incredibly well. Andy's disappeared, and he does it once a show, guys, once a show. And now my microphone's dropped. Nightmare. But Lecce made it difficult, as they always do at home, and I was absolutely gutted for them that they couldn't hold on. But still, a very good point. He's back. a very good point for the Pugliese. And yeah, Milan just need a win, don't they? They just need to get through this bit of a grind. But it does look like, I think when I look at Milan, the first thing that came into my head was the Ferguson quote. I think it's Ferguson, where he said the second championship is harder to win than the first championship, because he's like, the hunger just kind of disappears a bit, and to keep the players motivated is so difficult. And that's what I can see in Milan a little bit, and that's what I can't see in Milan, I can see in Napoli. Napoli want to win it for the first time. They've got that hunger. Milan, I feel like there's just that slight foot off the pedal, that slight just not quite that hunger that they had last year. But they're still second, and, they're in the best position to jump if Napoli do fall. So, there's still hope.
There is that, but I think there's a bit of complacency. That's what you're alluding to. There's just complacency with that Milan defence as well at times. Just, it's a shame, but let's crack on.
We do need... That's Serie A, guys. That's Serie A. Elsewhere, I should probably end the section, actually, rather than just finishing my sentence. Elsewhere, Cremonese, are they ever going to get a win? They were 3-0 down against Monza, managed to come back 3-2. Still not good enough. Could possibly be the worst side in Serie A history. I need to double-check who holds the record at the minute. Inter beat Verona 1-0. Lazio beats Sassuolo 2-0. Jesus Christ, Sassuolo are terrible. Torino beat Spezia 1-0. Adam, you wanted to talk about this super quickly?
I only wanted to say Dragowski came back for this match, first time since he broke his leg, unfortunately, against Hellas Verona last year, should I say. So great to see him back. But the other point is Kivor, Jakub Kivor. Obviously, a lot of hype, rumours about him going to somewhere in Europe / Serie A. Did not play or come on. So interesting to see whether that was deliberate or if there was something else in it. Don't know.
Keep an eye on that one. And the last game's Udinese, who we talked about, lost 2-1 to Bologna after going 1-0 up, conceded in the 59th and the 80th. And then currently, Samp, they are 1-0 down to Empoli. Piron Ebuehi getting the goal, and Marin getting an assist for the Fantacalcio. I'm absolutely smashing it this week, extending my lead against second in the table. Oh, I'm excited. But we need to move on to the Premier League, and we're going to start with, Andy, I'm going to let you go first. Chronologically, it came first. I predicted a win, so you're welcome. United come back from a goal down to win 2-1. I'll let you talk about the game, then we'll talk about that horrific decision. How happy are you?
We'll talk about the decision in a moment, I'm sure we will. But no, I'm absolutely delighted. And I think even going into the game, considering, it was only a few months ago that we got absolutely battered 6-3. With a performance that bad, it should realistically have been 10. It was that bad. And, even going back to last season, they did the double over United so convincingly and so easily. Like, it was embarrassing at times. But, and I think although United have been on the run of like 8-9 games on the bounce, I think a lot of people have probably rightly pointed out, and, I've pointed out when speaking about Arsenal, that they've beaten teams they should be beaten. It's Manchester United, for God's sake, with the amount of money we spend on transfers and players and the personnel we've got, we should be beating those teams. But nonetheless, we weren't doing that last season or the season before that or the season before that. So it's very good to see that. I think with Ten Hag now, he's got a very settled team. I think that's maybe where, going back to October, that wasn't quite the case. Casemiro is an absolute revelation. There were some surprises in the lineup. I didn't expect to see Fred starting.
Or Wan-Bissaka.
Yeah, well, Dalot's been injured. Wan-Bissaka has played a couple of games recently. Considering how there was a point where he was playing Tyrone Malacia at right back rather than playing Wan-Bissaka, I think a lot of people, myself included, made a judgment that he wasn't in Ten Hag's plans, wasn't going to play a minute. But, since the World Cup, Dalot's still been injured, not been able to play, with several games in a short space of time. He's got his chance and he's taken it, to be fair to him. He's always been quite a good one-on-one defender, but I think he's obviously had a little bit of coaching. But there was that clip where he was doing random skills at the edge, which I could not believe I was watching him. But no, I was delighted. I think Ten Hag, I think United have been crying out for a manager who's tactically competent, because we have.
So what would you say is the major difference between that 6-3 performance, like, as in what's changed in the team between that 6-3 performance and now, because it was like night and day. I was watching it and I was like, bloody hell, United are a team again. Like, this is, they're good. Like,
I think it's Casemiro, I think is, and the back four in general are the biggest difference. A lot of people say that Casemiro is a bit, overpriced, but at the end of the day, we've got somebody who's only 29, 5 Champions League under his belt. Yeah. It took. He didn't play. He wasn't in the starting lineup for the first 7 or 8 games. Obviously, there was a few fitness issues there. And so, at the end of the day, he's moving to a new country, and all that kind of stuff as well. And I think he's just showed his quality. His ability to be able to break play from deep and make the right decision under heavy pressure is something that we haven't had in the centre of midfield. Same with Eriksen as well. We've got players that can actually build play from deep. And since Michael Carrick, if I'm being honest with you, we haven't really had that caliber of player. And I think also having a settled back line, obviously Martinez is obviously still nursing a hangover.
That guy went hard.
He must have done, because he's not played pretty much since he's got back. But it's clear that Ten Hag prefers a left-footed centre-back. I think what it says for Harry Maguire's future at the club, I don't really know. But Luke Shaw, if you said to me a few months ago, we're going to put Luke Shaw at centre-back up against Erling Haaland, I'd have gone, what's he doing? But I think Ten Hag's got enough credit in the bank to be able to do that. And I think in the first half, the game plan was set up perfectly. You had Fred stalking Kevin De Bruyne, actually a very good opportunity. That's not a role I'm used to seeing Fred in.
Doing the Park Ji-sung role,
or Andre Herrera on Hazard a couple of years ago. So he's obviously been told, stick with him. And in the first half, it worked. And I think one thing United have always been good at, even before Ten Hag got here, certainly featured under Solskjaer, was that we're very good on the counter-attack. And I think that was something that worked well in the first half. We've created some really good quality chances. Bruno Fernandes is actually doing quite a good job on the right-hand side at the moment. I think obviously the second half was tough. When City got their goal, they absolutely deserved it. I think they came out all guns blazing. They played like this, the Manchester City side we know and most people know and love.
You nearly said it.
I said it myself. But wait a second. But no, I think the main difference, obviously, with Cancelo and Walker, a lot of the time they like to come infield to try and create overloads in the centre of the park. And Cancelo especially wasn't really do that in the first half. Whether that was a specific instruction or not, I don't know. But he didn't seem to be doing it. But they started stringing a lot of passes together. And it wasn't a surprise when Grealish came and got the goal. That goal was coming. I think Foden, though, had a very poor game for Manchester City. He's
having a bit of an average season, I'm going to say.
I've got to be honest.
I don't think he's been fantastic this season. I don't think it's weird. Like, I feel like City are now getting used to Haaland and it's taking time. Like, Adam, I don't know what you think with where are City? Because I feel like they're gettable now. They can be got at. Like Liverpool started to. All of a sudden people are like, oh no, we can get at these now. And City, it feels like that, right?
Yeah, I think they're just experiencing one of their, form periods where they're just, I suppose, not grinding out those results as easily as they used to. I think teams have found a way around it as well, especially now that kind of they've tried to evolve the game so that it suits Haaland, whereas now you're kind of starting to realize they haven't got the wingers that they normally kind of maybe rely for Haaland to run onto. So they're very much more compact, much more narrower. So, like, for example, Man United were able to exploit that with just the constant pace. Malacia, a number of times in that first half where he was bombing it, and he caused that, indecision with Ederson where he came out of his goal as well at one point in that first half. That's what Man United kind of exploited. And I think that wasn't just that match. You saw it in previous matches. Man City are starting to crumble a bit and they need to get that solidarity in terms of the way they play. I think they almost overcomplicated, and I think that's an argument about Pep just in general, that he just does it over.
It's
know,
not the
for example,
first time.
Exactly. We know that they're going to be the best at passing, but Man United just absorbs it. And as Andy alluded to, Eriksen plays a really interesting role because he's now becoming that focal point like Michael Carrick, where he's kind of pinging these balls and doing these quick offensive like plays. And that's really helpful because when you've got players that have got pace to burn, I was a bit like unsure about Wan-Bissaka, but he did a really good, game in itself. I thought he was really comfortable. I was most impressed by Manasseh. I wasn't too sure because of the previous game he had, but this is the thing. They exploited it. Again, there's arguments about Martial, whether he's up to it, but Rashford, this is the thing. I'm going to put my kind of take. He is going to be critical for Man United's form going forward. I hope his hamstring keeps up because I think there was that one moment just before half time where I thought, oh, he's coming off now.
I think if we were playing any other team other than say Manchester City and Liverpool, he probably would have come off. I think because of the importance of the game, he kept going. But I think it says a lot that a half fit Rashford is still a better option to play against Martial.
Well, does
it worry you though? Does it worry you that if he does go off injured for let's say a month or two, and I know you've got Wout, which is one point which could be better than Martial, right? But he's not the same player as what. Rashford
and I think. I think there is concerns there, definitely. He's in the best form he's been in for the past 2 or 3 years at the very least. Obviously, with Jadon Sancho, there's a lot going on. I think there's been a lot going on a personal level with him.
He needs time. He needs time.
Stuff that we're not going to know about. To be honest, I don't want to know about because it's private. But it's obviously there's a reason he's been away from the squad for the time that he has. I think it's too much to put Garnacho starting every single week. However, though, what a difference that boy makes.
That guy is incredible, man. He is exciting. He's very incredibly exciting.
Very, very exciting. Also, I don't really get overhyped because I've seen it with the likes of say like Yanazai.
That's true.
But in terms of what he's doing right now, he is doing a great job. And I think going back to Manchester City as well, for a team that so carefully constructs their squads and puts so much thought into the players that they buy, you would think they would have better centre backs available than Nathan Ake and Akanji, if I'm being completely honest.
What about left backs as well? Left backs are just so short of it. I know they've got Mendy, right? Mendy.
Well, it's a recent one. I think, I guess we should probably talk about the goals. Shouldn't we?
Now, Andy, we have to talk about it because that first goal for United, I will go to my grave believing that Rashford is interfering with play there. That whole move, Ederson is looking at him like he's about to shoot, and the whole thing. If he's not there, Akanji just runs through, or Ederson comes out and collects the ball. That is not a move.
That's not. I don't necessarily agree. So, maybe there's an argument for Rashford potentially interfering with play. I 100% get
potentially interfering. He's running over the ball,
but he hasn't. He was slowing down. He hasn't touched it, and everyone's seen the screenshot where you've got Rashford and Akanji just behind him, but Akanji wasn't going to have the pace to overtake him. There was no guarantee at the speed the ball was running, he was going to get there before Fernandes got there.
But Ederson comes out for that ball. If Rashford he would have had there, Ederson comes out for it.
I disagree because he would have. If you think about the angle where Fernandes hit it, it was a similar sort of position where Rashford would have hit it. It was going to get hit at the edge of the area. So Ederson, in my view, was maybe going to have to come out anyway.
Right.
Because they're both at the edge of the 18-yard box. Rashford is, right-footed, so he's going to try and curl it. So he's kind of put himself in position to anticipate a shot. He probably expected it from Rashford, and maybe that's where the interpretation has come from. But I can see why City fans are pissed.
If City score that against you, you are fuming. I'm telling you.
Yes.
I think, and that maybe is the issue though, is that ultimately anything that is open to interpretation is going to have decisions like that, unfortunately.
I think AFC Finners is in your camp, Andy. He just goes, it should have been offside, but I don't care because it's Man City. I feel like you might have someone who agrees with you. Finners.
No, you know what? I think you're right. I would have been fuming being given against me, but it's at the same time, it's not the most outrageous decision I've ever seen. To be honest with you, like
it did make me think of the goal that Arsenal scored against United last year when Nketiah was stood in front of De Gea, and then it was just like he's not interfering with play. It did make me think of that, and I was like, maybe I need to be quiet.
Do you remember the Champions League final when Benzema had the disallowed goal, and everyone, he. It was similar to that where everyone was just like, should that really have been disallowed because it hit somebody else to come to him? Yeah. Again, it's an interpretation thing. You've got a group of people who goes, well, by the letter of the law, it could in theory stand. And other people going, well, it doesn't because he's clearly interfering. And maybe the slight problem we have is that we've got a lot of referees that don't come from professional football.
Well, this is something that, we need it in the game.
If you've played the game, it's a bit like that Polish referee in the World Cup. I think he's played the game, and you could tell in some of the decision making that because he's been there and done that at a professional level, you can you can interpret the game in a different way. And I think maybe that's some of it. You've got a bunch of people sat in a room in VAR. You've got the referee, all of who've probably never played the game at a professional level, and they're looking at a rule book, going, "Could this stand?" And they go, "In theory, yeah."
Yeah, I think I don't know. If it gone in against Arsenal, I'd have been absolutely spitting fire. What do you think, Adam, before we move on to Arsenal?
I think to allude to Andy's point, it's no black and white when it comes to scenario writing in terms of saying this is offside, this isn't offside. I thought at the time it was offside, though. I thought, linesman's going to pull it and call it offside. The fact that, Rashford's trying his best not to touch it kind of says he knew if he doesn't touch this has a potential to go in, right? And ultimately it would have gone to VAR, which I think the players are now getting adjusted to as well. They're getting used to.
You've got to play to the whistle.
Well, no,
exactly. And that's what City didn't do.
Undoubtedly. But I also think the fact that Howard Webb has come into PGMOL halfway through the season, there's an attitude change halfway through the season as well. He said VAR isn't going to get as involved as it has in the past. And there's been a few incidents, even in Arsenal Tottenham yesterday, where people were looking, going VAR, and then you're like, oh, it's not getting involved. That's quite nice. So I think there's an adjustment period for that as well. Like the VAR isn't going to get as involved on-pitch decisions, which I think overall will be a positive thing. But in this case, I cannot believe that that's a goal stand. Honestly, it blows my mind. But I'm going to go to one comment from Finners. Is on fire today. I maintain we have seen English football Stalingrad this weekend. I love the reference. And maybe entering the Newcastle, Arsenal, and Manchester United era. Andy, you ready? I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm up for that.
We can together fight the forces of evil of Saudi Arabia and keep it out of Newcastle. I
don't know. We'll wait to see what happens with United's takeover. We might we might very well end up in the axis of evil. Hopefully, we don't. But
God, we've got no hope. If you
we might end up doing in Italy, is switching sides halfway through.
We have got no hope if you get bought out as well. But for now, we've got all the hope in the world because London is red. Not just North London. London is red. I cannot believe how beautiful yesterday was. That is the best I've seen us play in, 7 years, 8 years. That is honestly, that first half was a complete lesson in football for Tottenham. I think the ability, the way we managed to completely control the game from the first minute, and towards the end of the half, Ramsdale, who was massive all game, managed to come up with some big saves at the end of the half to keep us in it and to keep us at 2-0. But I think the way we just controlled the game, Tottenham didn't have a sniff. I'm going to just go a bit mad about Zinchenko. And Martinez has been fantastic for United. Great signing for United. He was our first choice. We got Zinchenko, and honestly, I couldn't be happier. I think there's no player in the world who does what Zinchenko does. As a left back coming into midfield, we're able to go from that 4-3-3 to a 3-4-3 without losing any strength defensively. The versatility of our defenders, that Ben White is now one of the best right backs in the league, and he came in as a centre-back. His ability to drop in when Zinchenko goes, it just gives us a whole different dimension when we're playing and when we've got the ball. Off the ball, we were fantastic. I thought our centre-backs, Gabriel and Saliba, are building a genuinely incredible partnership. Saliba's had a few wobbles before the World Cup. He scored an own goal, gave away a goal, and I was like, oh, Christ, this could go bad. Didn't play in the World Cup, was a bit rusty when he came back, but yesterday he was unbelievable. Gabriel is going under the radar of how good a season that guy is having. And then Martin Ødegaard. We talked about him on Thursday as well, but just how good that guy is, I cannot comprehend. And I know it's very difficult talking about Thomas Partey because he shouldn't be playing in the Premier League. He is having the best season of his life. If he's injured, I think much like United have got two players that if they get injured, they're in trouble. We've got two players that if they get injured, we're in trouble. For United, it's Casemiro and Rashford. For us, it's Partey and Saka. Or Partey and Ødegaard is kind of arguable. But if either of them get long-term injuries, that is where the team is weak because you can't replace those players. You just can't. You can't get someone who's second choice or to agree to be second choice who's as good as those players. It's just not going to happen. Your second choice is going to be a drop in quality. But I think Partey has been unbelievable. Granit Xhaka in this new role of like a number 8 where he's attacking and defending. He's honestly the best football he's had in his Arsenal career. I just think Tottenham got nowhere fucking near it and it was beautiful. And then in the second half, we showed the other side of us where Tottenham pushed. They couldn't be as bad as they were in the first half. We knew that they were a better team in second half. They score all their goals in the second half. They came out and they put us under a bit of pressure. I think once we got through past the 60th minute, I was like, right, I think we're okay. Once we got through that first 15 minutes without conceding, I was like, okay, I think we can do this now. Ramsdale, I cannot believe he's 24 years old. That is the best game he's ever played for us, ever. He was so solid. His saves were incredible. I think his distribution was amazing. He was a calming influence on the defense. Every time a cross came into the box, he was there catching it. And if you compare that to the goalkeeper at the other end of the pitch, I think that's where the game was lost. I think if they've got a world-class keeper, I'm not saying Ramsdale's world-class yet, but if they've got a keeper as good as Ramsdale, I think that's a tighter game. That's maybe a 0-0. Maybe they nick it 1-0, if you know what I mean. But I think that game was won on the goalkeepers. And we've talked a while about Lloris and how he's kind of done now. Like, he's retired from international football. That first goal was an absolutely shocking from beginning to end. Like, Sessegnon, Saka absolutely took him. He did not have a good day. He tries to show Saka onto his right foot. And Saka's done it a few times this season. He did it against Leeds. I think he's done it in a few other games where they've shown him onto his right foot and he's fired it across the box and he's still gone in. Sessegnon tries to show him on his weak foot, but Saka's so good, he can do it anyway. But Lloris has got to be doing better there. Got to be doing better there. And then the second goal, Ødegaard again, I think arguably another keeper gets to that. It's not a rocket. It's not like it doesn't roll along the ground. I think it's a fairly tame shot, but it's targeted. I think another keeper, if that's De Gea, if that's Ederson, if that's Alisson, they save that all day. So I think Spurs, we're kind of seeing now, we've been seeing for a while where the gaps in that squad are. And yesterday, it was fucking obvious. And Kulusevski, they rely on him so much. I thought he actually provided a bit of a threat to us. But when they took him off for Ben Davies in the 80th minute, I was like, well, here we go. We might as well pack up and go home, boys. That's it. We're done. But I'm going to go to Adam first. Your thoughts on the game, and I'll go to you, Andy. We can talk about Spurs and Arsenal. But Adam, you first.
Yeah, I'll start off with Spurs then. I thought they were scared. They were just the amount of just time they were giving to likes of Saka, for example. Like you say, Ødegaard was afforded so much time on the ball. And it surprises me and it doesn't surprise me. But Conte, the way he sets up is very much the same. But it almost felt like it was still a message to the people high above at Spurs to say, this is the shower of shit I've got right now. These are the players I've got. Yeah. And you look at this. There's no way I'm going to take this squad to your Pochettino levels where you take the existing core group on a cheap and try and get them to be a top 4 team. There's no chance of that. And it was really very evident. The fact that he doesn't trust half the players that they've bought, Jed Spence springs to mind, this is the thing, this is where I struggle.
You can tell who a Conte buys, who are definitely not.
Exactly.
Yeah, he makes it pretty clear, as well. I think But you're right. I think Conte is. It looked yesterday more than ever. It looked like he had one foot out the door, and it looks like he's kind of. They're all sick of each other. I think the Spurs fans don't like him. He doesn't particularly like the club. Like it feels like it's getting really quite toxic there. Spurs do like to play attractive football. They've always been shit, but they've always been shit playing attractive football. Now they're shit playing not attractive football, and I think maybe the fans are getting a little bit sick of it. But Andy, what did you make of Tottenham? And then we'll kind of wax lyrical about Arsenal for a bit.
I think Tottenham, again, like although they've invested a little bit, they've still got at the very average of key positions at the moment. You know, Eric Dyer shouldn't be a starting centre back for a team aspiring to be top four. I mean, to be fair to him, compared to where he was 18 months ago, he has improved. He got himself back to the England squad. So, you know, he was a better player than he was showing. But at the same time, would he start for, you know, either Newcastle, United, Arsenal, you know, those kind of teams that are in and around you? Absolutely no, he wouldn't. And I think that's part of it. Lenglet as well couldn't really get much of a game at Barcelona. You know, not particularly great. And I think apart from Romero, their defense is very, very lightweight as well. You know, for example, like Matt Doherty, he was a player that Wolves were quite happy to get rid of, to be honest.
They didn't fight for him.
No, they were quite happy to let him go. Ryan Sessegnon as well. He's been there a few years now at this point, about 3 years, I think, at this point. He hasn't really pushed on, I don't think, in terms of
I think he
game.
had an absolute shocker yesterday. He was awful.
Saka absolutely rinsed him. But then again, like, he's not really, he's either, you know, I think playing at left wing back is a hard position to play. You've got to be some caliber of player. And I think when Conte's been over in Italy, it's easy to find players who are used to playing in that kind of system. Whereas in England, that isn't quite as common. And I think with Conte and Tottenham, I think you've alluded it to as well, Rory, that it feels like a marriage of convenience. Conte needed a job, Tottenham needed a manager, and that's what you know, they got obviously into the Champions League and they achieved something in the interim. Whereas I think it was always going to fall apart because Daniel Levy's not going to invest on the kind of players, the caliber of players that Conte needs. They've obviously got their own structure at the club where Patriarchy's buying his own kind of players. Whether he's getting any pushback, I mean, he might well be recalled back to Italy for non-footballing reasons. So maybe it's just doing stupid shit before he goes. But you know, it feels like there isn't that synchronization. You know, you look at Brighton as an example. There's a clear synchronization between this is how the manager wants to play football. These are the players that could fit in with that. Whereas I feel that hasn't been done at Tottenham.
Yeah, I feel like it's even a step beyond that with like Brighton, where it's like it's not even how the manager wants to play football, it's how the club wants to play football. And we find a manager who plays like that, and we find players who play like that because they've lost Graham Potter, they've lost half of their coaching staff, they've lost their head of recruitment, they've lost everything, and the club just rolls on as if nothing's happened because there's that clear identity. And I think this is what United are trying to get now. It's what Arsenal are instilling now. It's what like Liverpool, I think, still have. They just need to throw some money at it. Like City have it. Like these clubs that do, any club, no matter who you are, you need a clear idea. And Spurs, their idea is qualify for the Champions League. Like that's their idea. Like they don't have how they're going to get there. It's just, well, that's what we want to do. So
we've got a big stadium to pay for. Therefore, we need to be top four.
The thing is, I'm sorry, Spurs fans, but from an Arsenal fan, we went through fucking years of not being able to buy players because we had to pay for an expensive stadium. Your stadium was more expensive than ours. Like, this could take a while. Like, you have to pay it off, and you can't go out and spend 60, 70 million on players and get the caliber that you need. And the way the market's going, the money's going ridiculous. Like, it feels like they're not going to be able to compete on that level while they're still paying off that stadium. And I think this is what we're seeing now. And I think for the owners, they have to be sensible, but it's fucking grim to watch it because we were there with Arsenal. Arsene Wenger performed miracles keeping us in the Champions League. Without him, we wouldn't have been there for 10 years because we were not spending money and we were selling every player that was anywhere near decent. Keep an eye on Harry Kane because if the club need the money,
Yeah,
he's only got 2 years left. He couldn't be around. He might not be around for much longer. But
I think I saw a Spurs fan like a couple of weeks ago going, let's just forget all the bad stuff that happened and just bring Pochettino back.
Oh God!
Like the ex that won't move on.
Yeah, I think that's the stage they're at. But you know what? I can guarantee Pochettino, the way he talks about it, he probably would go back in a heartbeat, and everyone would feel good about themselves for it.
I think he will be the next Spurs manager.
I think
it's like already pretty much agreed. Like, I think he will be the next one.
I think he will. And I think, let's be honest, he took Spurs to a Champions League final. Like, he did all right. Even though he's won fuck all, which is in the great tradition of Spurs managers, in the relative grand scheme of achieving fuck all, he's done it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
He's achieved fuck all in a more aesthetically pleasing way and plays some great football and brought through. He was able to bring the likes of Dele Alli from NK Dons and turn them into really good players. If it's not him and he's somebody else like that who can be a project of it, I would arguably say Graham Potter would have been a better fit for what Spurs are trying to achieve. But obviously, he went all full Voldemort.
He still might be available at the end of the season.
He'll probably be available at the end of a month.
I am enjoying that down at Stamford Bridge. I am enjoying that. But just quickly before we move on, because we need to talk about Brighton Liverpool. AFC Finders has very quickly jumped in and said, I think Nketiah could become Arsenal's Rashford. Now, look, Nketiah is. I'm not gonna be saying that, but he put in a hell of a shift and has been putting in a hell of a shift since Jesus dropped out. Everyone said once Jesus was injured, Arsenal are going to collapse. Nketiah's come in 5 goals in 6 games, I think it is. Unbelievably clinical and actually added so much to his game. I wanted to give him his flowers before we move on because that kid has bulked up. And there's a moment where he chips the ball over, I think it's Eric Dyer. Absolutely beautiful. And 2 moments that I need to talk, both provided by Gabriel Martinelli. One where he controlled it with his back in front of Romero, and Romero looked like he was going to throttle him. And at the end of the game, the spider camera that comes down on the pitch?
Yes, I saw that. He threw his scarf,
Martinelli threw his scarf on the spider camera. So this morning, there would have been a Tottenham employee angrily trying to grasp at the scarf to get it off. And just that image cheers me up. So thank you. We do very quickly also need to talk about the Tottenham fan who kicked Aaron Ramsdale.
Twat.
The fuck is this? Fuck is this? It's happening quite like
it looks like he was Hogwarts / Green Street wannabe, didn't he? Just like
it happened last year, Leicester against Forest. It's happening increasingly. The security in stadiums needs to be looked at. Jane, I know I don't want to get all pearl clutching but that's honestly, I think Tottenham, obviously I hate Tottenham, but I think there should be fines. There should be something, some kind of penalty. If a player is attacked on your pitch by a supporter, that's fucking serious. That is serious.
For me, it was just how blasé the steward was. He kind of just pushed him just go back in surely.
I think fans need to get a grip of themselves.
What the fuck is that?
Yeah, because I think maybe I'm just hypothesizing here, but I think because of the TikTok generation, the social media generation, there seems to be a need to create scenes,
drama,
in inverted comma, a drama and viral content and stuff like that. And I think people are just sort of going out of their way to, put attention onto themselves and a bunch of attention seekers. We all love football, but I've never once thought, I'm going to run onto a pitch and twat somebody,
kick another human being.
Because if you did that, if you were not playing football, you went out in the street and just indiscriminately twatted somebody, you would probably spend a little time in the nick.
Yeah. I think honestly, it really, really obviously pissed me off, and I just thought, grown men. What is happening in your life if that is your reaction to something?
The divorce isn't going well.
yeah, exactly. The wife's left and you can't see the kids, kind of thing. But I thought Arteta showed some incredible man management around whole thing,
especially with Xhaka.
That moment is so funny, where he's finally dragging Ramsdale away. He's got a smile on his face. He's like, "Oh fuck, it's Granit," and just runs. Granit is ready to go.
He didn't run that fast in his playing days. I swear.
He never went that quick. But it did, to wrap up finally on this Arsenal bit. It did remind me of the Tony Adams quote, who said, "You always need 7. You need 7 in your team that if there's a fight, they're going to turn up. And for the first time in fucking years, I think Arsenal have got their 7. I genuinely think we showed that fight. Richarlison is a knobhead. That's it. We're leaving it there. We need to talk about Liverpool-Brighton. This Liverpool plan of just waiting for Summer to arrive and Bellingham to turn up doesn't seem to be working. How are they going to do in the meantime? It's Andy, let's get your Liverpool view, and then Adam, I'll go to you for Brighton.
I think Liverpool, similar to Manchester United in some ways, I think because of the situation that the owners have put out, they wanted to sell the club. It's clear that they've reined back the spending in response to that. I think it's, it's an aging squad. It's a much of the same players that were there 4, 5, 6 years ago. The likes of Firmino, Henderson, James Milner, Joe Gomez. They've been there for a few years now, and the squad hasn't been refreshed as quickly, as efficiently as Klopp would like. And I think there seems to be this assumption from Liverpool fans, and I don't know where it's come from, that they're automatically getting Jude Bellingham. I don't know where it's come from, but it feels that they've made an automatic assumption that we're going to get Jude Bellingham, yada, 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 without considering, number one, they're going to need to play Champions League football. And as it stands at the moment, they won't be, because there's a 10-point gap between United and Liverpool. And as I said, there's still half a season left, but it's not looking particularly great for them. And it's got shades of Klopp's last season at Dortmund, where, again, they struggled to replace names that had left. They struggled to regenerate the squad with the personnel that was needed. And I felt, to make another similarity as well with Darwin Núñez, I think I remember in Klopp's last season, Immobile got purchased for Dortmund. Again, big money, big expectations, a big goal scorer record, and got like 2 or 3 league goals. And I think Liverpool, when they spend big, they have to make it count, because they can't afford to just do the same thing 6 months later, a bit like Chelsea are doing. I think maybe that's
6 days later. Another one.
6 days later. I think that's where the difficulty is coming for them. And I feel, I'm also a Liverpool fan, I would be sort of really, really concerned, because, again, Trent Alexander-Arnold, 1 week he's the best right back that's ever lived. 2, he can't, and this last week he can't defend the shit as per normal. The real solution is that stop pretending he's a right back. He isn't. Stick him into field and you might go somewhere. And I think with Gakpo as well, it's early days, but he hasn't looked. They need someone to come and make an immediate impact. And I think
also coming into a struggling team, you're never going to just like Luis Diaz came in and started tearing it up because Liverpool were tearing it up. And it's like, this is easy to play. I'm just smashing goals in because we're unbelievable. Coming into a team that's just, obviously, it's not working. It could be that thing. Yeah, it's just more difficult. I think Núñez is getting a bit of a rough deal. His goal he misses some absolute sitters. He should have like as many goals as Haaland, but his goal record actually isn't that bad. I feel like he's getting a bit of a rough deal. But again, he's part of a Liverpool team Liverpool the 2 years ago, eh?
Yeah, I mean, he's got 5 in like 13 games, which I think if you paid 75, it's not bad, but if you pay £75 million for a striker, you would expect more goals.
It's only Haaland that's bloody twisted this thing where you think, because Gabriel Jesus for Arsenal has been an incredible signing, and he has, but he's got 5 goals. It's, if you know what I mean, it's all about perspective, I think. And I think he's in a struggling team and he does miss sitters. He does, he's such a confusing player, but I think he's getting a bit of a rough deal. But we need to move on to Brighton, because it's not only Liverpool being terrible. Brighton
fucking brilliant.
Jesus Christ, we're going to see them in Europe, right? They're going to make it in Europe this year, Adam.
Yeah. I think there's a very good chance that they'll be in Europe. And I think just to kind of talk about Brighton, that squad that faced Liverpool only cost 31 million in total. So it goes to show you how astute they've been in the marketplace. Yeah. The one thing I was going to say about Liverpool is they are missing a replacement for Michael Edwards. It's very clear that transfer strategy has been going by the wayside. But on Brighton, I think the thing that De Zerbi has added recently is they are so much more clinical when it comes to it. Because I think you can talk about possession. This is always associated with Brighton / De Zerbi. But what he's made them do is be more clinical on the counter-attacks. They're taking their chances. You know, when you're seeing Danny Welbeck do Gaza-esque kind of goals, and then Solly March as well.
Welbeck.
Solly
I've got
March, where did he
I've got a
come
soft
from
spot for
as
him
well?
as well.
That clinical goal for that second one in particular was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You would have thought Domenico Berardi just scored that goal, not Solly March. So I think that's the element that he's improved. And it's interesting about the Trossard story as well. The fact that even from the fact that it sounds like there's been a clash, he's been isolated from the squad. He's been told to basically do one. So it's clear that he's got an identity in terms of the squad. He doesn't want anyone to disrupt the flow, and it looks like they'll just crack on. Like you say about the fact that they had Potter and his whole team kind of go, they're just continuing it, and they just, that philosophy still seems to be there, regardless if De Zerbi is there for the future. So full of praise for Brighton. It's just a question, can they keep it going? Because, you know, Fulham have been doing quite well of late as well. So
Fulham are
keep
unbelievable.
that momentum as well. I know they got that unlucky result against Newcastle. Just full of praise. And you look at like the players like Levy Colwell, who they got from loan from Chelsea. Again, he looks like a hell of a player. Be interesting to see if he stays at Chelsea as well.
I think as well with Colwell, there was rumours. I was reading an article in The Athletic earlier. Apparently, he's been considered for the England squad. As a
His
potential
performances have been really
option.
good.
And to be fair, like it's at sort of a centre back position, it's not unreasonable to be wanting to try somebody out a couple of years. But I think also another one I want to shout out is Mitoma.
God, I love that guy. I just love him. I love him.
Incredible.
He was given Alexander-Arnold as Salah right or going over.
He's such an exciting player. There's this like rebirth of Japanese football at the moment, and like Celtic are kind of weirdly leading the way. There's like a lot of Japanese players coming over to Europe now, and you're like, damn, they are just super.
Well, they've been coming over to Germany for years, haven't they?
It was Doan, right?
Doan, Kamada, Asano.
I think. But yeah, it seems like I think as the markets are inflating to such a high level, I think clubs like Brighton are trying to get ahead of the curve and go, right, if you try to buy a player from Europe who's already at an established European club, or from like who's Argentinian or Brazilian, it's invariably going to cost a lot of money, or go to other clubs. And I think if you look at the Asian market a bit more, or of a less renowned South American nations, like in Stupian, Caicedo,
Ecuador now is popping off.
And you don't get those kind of players without good scouting, good networks. That is years and years of putting a system in place to be able to pick out those kind of players. And I think they also take a risk as well, because I think the reason why I'll give you Moises Caicedo as an example of this. I remember just before we signed to Brighton, it was Manchester United are very, very close to signing him. Now they didn't in the end, and I suspect it's because they probably had doubts as to whether he could perform at Premier League level, whereas Brighton are willing to take that gamble. Because when you bring the likes of Stupian and Caicedo from the leagues that they've come from, there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to adapt, be successful. But they've obviously made a calculated risk that it is going to come off, and it has done. And I think,
Caicedo, who you're talking about, linked today to guess who? Guess who he's linked to?
Chelsea.
Of course it is. 75 million. The spending never ends down at Stamford Bridge. Unfortunately,
I was going to say Trossard might end up there. I mean, Chelsea are quite accommodated to stroppy Belgian wingers, so Trossard might end up there as well.
Have him, absolutely have him. But we are overrunning, so I'm just very quickly going to say on the Mudryk deal, if it took 100 million and an 8-year contract to get him, then you're more than welcome to him. Just take him. I do not want to be offering players 8-year contracts at 150 grand a week. We offered him 37, and we're like, you're 22, get a grip. You are not coming in at 100 grand a week. If that's what it takes, have him, do it. Fine. Knock yourselves out. I'm glad that Arsenal didn't just panic. Arsenal of old would have been like, okay, yeah, fuck it, fine, we'll pay. I'm so glad we didn't. We'll move on to someone else, and it'll be.
I was going to say that one person who's probably taking his or throwing his remote control at the TV. He's probably Roman Abramovich. He's had to sell the club. It's very clear that he's pro-Putin, and I know it shouldn't be too political there. But
well, we're going to talk about it anyway, Andy. We have to very quickly say, Are we comfortable with football? Like, I know now we're all pro-Ukraine. I want to put that right at the front, right? Definitely pro-Ukraine. However, I don't know if I'm comfortable with transfer fees in football being used in military forces. I feel like this is a gate or a path that shouldn't be gone down. I know it's a bit of a serious note to end on, but I genuinely feel like it's not being talked about. And that if this was another country, if this was, let's say, Saudi Arabia, who are bombing the shit out of Yemen, maybe people wouldn't be looking on it as favorably. Like, how do you feel about this? Feels like a watershed moment.
Go on, Andy.
I was going to say, yeah, it's certainly unusual, and I think it's not something that I'd want to see in football, really. However, I think if you consider Shakhtar Donetsk as a club, now they've not played at their home in the Donbass Arena in Donetsk region since 2014. So the area which they're supposed to be playing in was annexed by Russia, and then obviously you got the war brought into it as well. And I think, although you might, it's not something you want to see. As I said, you can understand the personal motivations of their president to do that, because they're a football club that has been homeless for going on 10 years. And I think when you think about their situation very, very specifically, you can understand it. But I think that's where you get a lot of whataboutery comes from. Because as you say, if another country did this, like Saudi Arabia, did exactly the same thing, the people will perceive it differently. So, yeah, I think it's, like I said, it's just not something I want to see making a habit out of. But at the same time, I can see the logic in that decision being made.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I can see that. What do you think, Adam? Like, I don't think I'm not against the Ukrainian cause. I want to make that clear. But you know what I mean. How do you feel about it, Adam?
Yeah, it is very awkward, isn't it? It's an awkward feeling. But I was going to exactly kind of allude to the point that Andy's made is about Donetsk as a club. They've had a lot of shit thrown at them, not just relocation. There's players they've had to release on frees, for example. They're still kind of having that debate with FIFA around fees, whether they should be owed, and they're currently suing FIFA in the process at the moment because it's gone to the courts of arbitration at the moment. So the fact that they've had to rehome in Poland temporarily and kind of try and make do, I suppose, with what they can do. But I think there's just an appetite to go home. And that's the thing, ultimately. But yeah, I appreciate money, and football just seems like it's money laundering, and there's something a bit seedy about it. It just doesn't feel right. But
I feel like it's just a path or a door I didn't really want opening in football. But we'll leave it there. I think we've been fairly even-handed, I hope. If we haven't, we'll definitely hear about it. But I think we have been. So, guys, we're going to leave it there for today. On Thursday, we're going to obviously preview the weekend, talk about the midweek games. You got Palace away. Oh, it's a tricky one. We'll see how it goes, and we're going to talk a little bit of transfer nonsense. We will see you on Thursday. Anything to say before we go, guys?
Nah, enjoyable as ever.
No, good times.
Beautiful. Follow us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod. Hit the like and subscribe button down here, and we will see you on Friday.
Ciao, ciao.